Bryan Reeves, welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. Thank you so much for taking part in this interview today.
I'm glad to be here, Venus. Thank you.
Welcome. When I read your profile, I was so excited to interview you, especially after reading your book, which we'll talk about in a while. For those who are unfamiliar with your work, could you tell us what you do?
The short of it is I've been for about the last 10 years, a relationship coach working with couples, men and women. The last 3, 4 years, I've really focused on coaching men, working with men. I'm a 49-year-old, just about to be 50 years, exquisitely aged man. And because I've seen through doing this work that men don't really get a lot of support in the ways that men really need support, particularly around intimate relationships. That's become my focus to really help men thrive in intimate relationships. So that's predominantly what I do. I'm also an author, a blogger. I have a few books on Amazon and all that stuff. But
Fantastic. So, what inspired you to follow this path?
I wouldn't say I was inspired so much as life kicked me down this path.
Mhm.
It's not entirely true, but look, when I was 26, I was a captain in the Air Force, and I was completely disconnected from my body. Couldn't feel anything in my body. I didn't feel alive. I was like a dead man walking. Um, couldn't laugh, couldn't cry. And from that place, Venus, I tried to do intimacy with women. I don't mean just sexual intimacy, although I do mean that, but I also really just mean relationship. I tried to have relationships with women, intimate relationships, and it was just one disaster after the other. As I'm sure you can appreciate, right? A man who can't feel anything,
Mhm.
he's not likely to do well in intimate relationships. And that, I I think by the time I was 36, so was that about 13 years ago, I just resolved to stop sucking at love. This can't be my destiny to suck at this for the rest of my life. And so I just started throwing myself into the study of intimacy, of relationship, and studying with world renowned teachers, and reading all the books, and working on myself predominantly. And in the meantime, I'm blogging about it. I'm writing about it. This is 13 years ago. And that just took on a life of its own. And since then, I've people have asked me to help them in all kinds of ways, and that turned into for 10 years now, I've just been coaching and working with people on these same things that I struggled with for so long.
Amazing. I've just finished reading your book, Choose Her Every Day or Leave Her. It's one of the best books I've read in a long time. I have a whole shelf here of authors that I've interviewed, a whole of books from podcast
Yeah,
guests.
yeah, yeah,
I read yours on
yeah.
electronic. I'd love to have a physical one so I can add it to my collection. I
Yes,
was so sad when I
yes.
when the book ended because I felt like it was my it was a great
Mm,
escape for me. I love books that you just read and they absorb you. I read like
mm,
50 pages in the first sitting.
mm,
And the title is very intriguing. Choose her
mm,
every day or leave her.
mhm,
Could you tell us the
mhm.
story or the meaning of the title?
Yeah, choose her every day or leave her. That was born of a revelation. So this happened in my early days working with couples, and I started to see this pattern. I started to see through the people I was working with. That's one thing I love about being a coach is I learned so much about myself through working with people and having real conversations with people, what people are really going through. I had these aha moments like, oh my God, that was me. I did
Mhm.
that. And that was a revelation that I had back in 2015 that, I had been in a 5 year relationship with a woman that was just chaos and painful and suffer for both of us, not just for me, for her too, no doubt. And I realized in a moment of aha, oh my God, no wonder she was so frustrated so often with me, is because I said I was in, but I wasn't. I
Mm.
actually wasn't all in. So much of my behavior, of my actions, demonstrated to her that I actually was not both feet in on this relationship. And that epiphany just, I mean, it was like a gut punch because I had, this was so much of my awakening, Venus, as a man reflecting on relationship, was how much responsibility I had for things not going well. And I think a lot of men take too much responsibility. We over, some men will shut down, like the nice guy really shuts down and like, it's all my fault, things suck, and all the shame we'll heap upon ourselves. But that's not what I'm talking about. I mean, we men have so much responsibility that we ignore or just are ignorant of, really, and why our relationships aren't working. And so that was a moment of aha, oh my God. Yeah, I wasn't choosing her. I wasn't choosing this woman that I said I was choosing. No wonder it drove her nuts. No wonder she acted in all these ways that for me were really difficult, and that I would point the finger at and go, God, if only she would change that. Stop doing that. Stop talking to me like that. Not that that's not true. Not that she was so skillful in relationship either, but I just completely had ignored my part. And that was a huge part. I was not all in on her. And that's what that title reflects.
So were you aware of that or not? Were you
I
not
was not,
aware?
not at the time, not while I was with her. No,
Okay.
not at all. Not with any woman. I mean, it's like one of those things you can't see what you can't see. And I couldn't see it.
Mhm.
It just wasn't even a concept I understood. I just thought, hey, I'm here. I'm in the room with you. Why are you so
Mhm.
angry with me?
Okay.
Right?
So what signs are there like, of, do you, according to your opinion, about someone not being all in? I mean, what
Mm,
signs?
it's a great question. It's a really great question. What are some of the signs? Well, I coined this one phrase that I call masculine checkout syndrome,
Mm,
MCS. That's where in a heterosexual context where a man is physically in the room, but emotionally, intellectually, he's checked out. He's not really here. And that was my experience for many, many years. I was physically in the room, but I was not really bought into what the realities of relationship would really required me to be bought into. And what do I mean by that? I'm married now for 8.5 years with the woman I waited a long time for. I'm in incredible, wonderful marriage with this woman. Her name is Sylvie. She's fantastic. And the first couple of years of our relationship, a lot of things came up that in the past I would have run from. Just differences of opinion, anxieties, insecurities. I mean, whatever label we can put on them, just things that were hard for me to be with. And by the way, vice versa. Not like I'm so easy to be with.
mhm,
I'm not, right? But being all in a relationship means even when those difficult things come up, I'm leaning into them, even if it's hard, even if I don't really know what to do about them. I'm leaning in versus leaning out, right? It means, okay, this is hard for me, but I'm here for it. Let's
mm,
figure this out together, right? That's what leaning into relationship challenges, and all relationships, in my experience. There may be a few unicorn relationships here and there, but for the most part, all relationships have challenges. And if you're really being honest with each other, those challenges arise early in the dance. And I mean, it's the difference. Not choosing your partner means leaning out when the challenges arise, right? In a simple way of putting it.
okay, that's interesting. So, another reflection from the book. What is an evolved man?
Mm,
How do we
what is an
describe,
evolved
and
man?
where are they? I think a
Yeah,
lot of
it's
people want to
funny.
know where they are. Yeah.
I was very delicate in writing that chapter because, for the obvious conflicts of interest,
Mm,
I think a so-called evolved man is very careful about proclaiming himself evolved.
mm,
Uh, but that was an article that I wrote in response. That was a chapter I wrote in response to a friend of mine who had asked me, Bryan, what does an evolved man want from a woman? Right. So I wrote that chapter with that in mind. And I think, you know, in my experience, in my own evolution as a man, I would, I'd like to relanguage it as evolving man. What is a
mm,
growing, evolving man? And I think that a growing and evolving man is a man who is learning to come into right to relationship with his own feelings and emotions, with his body, with his own vulnerability, with who's willing to confront his own challenges, to not pretend everything's okay, to not wear the invincibility mask, but a man who's growing comfortable in his own body so that he can also be in partnership with another human who is also willing to bring their fullness to the relationship, right? Not just all the good parts, but even the messy and the ugly parts. I think this is the signature of an evolved or an evolving man is in that willingness to lean into the messy parts of life, of himself, and therefore of his partner as well.
So how can we encourage men to operate from the heart space? Because you mentioned it was interesting
Mm.
evolution that you talked about in your book about, younger years being focused on the physical and then the mind and then the heart. I thought
Yeah,
this was an interesting
yeah,
transition and transformation. So how does that occur? I mean, I can I know how it had happened for you, but how can we
yeah.
encourage men to get into that heart space?
Yeah, well, I want to also you actually asked me another question that I didn't answer about where are these men?
Okay. Are they your clients? You should do a
Well,
matchmaking service, maybe.
well, here's what I believe about that. I
Mm.
think I think such men are everywhere. Really, I
Yeah.
do. I think, in fact, I think inside, underneath the armor of every man is
Hmm.
a deeply sensitive and attuned man just waiting to emerge. I think in the heart and soul of every man, and I may be a little naive in that. I'm sure that there are some genuine, to the core assholes out there, surely, narcissists, all the things, mentally, maybe mental illness, all of that. But that notwithstanding, I think the vast majority of men are, again, underneath the armor, the programming, the BS, are good men, are that who have a big heart and are very sensitive, right? That said, right, also I agree that the vast majority of men are not expressed in that way, right? I think we're lagging behind women, by a few decades in terms of personal growth work and coming into our own, and so how can we encourage men? How can we help men? Well, I think one of the most important roles that women can play is actually in not, first off, not enabling our adolescent behavior to continue for most men. Our adolescence doesn't really even begin to end until our late 30s in our modern culture. Most men are still acting out of an adolescent psychology well into their 30s, if not their 40s and 50s. Some men never evolve out of their adolescent psychology. And what do I mean by that? But, like, for example, um, adults take responsibility for their choices, for their impact on each other. There's uh, this beautiful idea in the world of therapy about adult psychology, and I learned of this when I was reading about the masculine archetypes. King Warrior Magician Lover, a great book by two authors, Moore and Gillette, and they said in this book about the masculine archetypes, they say, adults take responsibility even for that which we are not responsible.
Mm.
Adults take responsibility even for that which we are not responsible. That one idea was life changing for me, especially in the realms of intimacy. Because one of the things that the adolescent male does is refuse to take responsibility unless I'm fully bought into it's my fault.
Mm.
Right? You see this a lot even in the manosphere these days. There's this whole, fuck your feelings, especially in the US. I don't know about Europe, but in the US, there's a whole movement of fuck your feelings. You know, I'm not responsible for how you feel. Don't make me responsible for how you feel, et cetera, et cetera. And again, that is not a relational stance to take, right?
Mm.
That is a product of a hyper individualistic, even again, as I say, an adolescent psychology. So don't enable that behavior, right? And I think, women learning to become, continuing to step into their own empowerment, their own self-expression, learning to have boundaries, to say no when it is a no, whatever that means, whether it's to, uh, I remember when I met my wife, I wanted to take her on a trip like within months to meet my parents and all my family. I was so excited. I just met this amazing woman. We're 2 months in, and she said no. She said,
Mm,
no, I'm not ready for that. And I was devastated.
mm,
How could you not be ready for this? Is sort of my, what do you mean? This is going to be amazing, a 2 week whirlwind tour. And she was like, this is a no for me. It's too much, too soon. And that challenged me to take a breath, to slow down, to meet her at a pace she was comfortable at. Right. And it was hard for her because she wanted to please me, wanted to not push me away, wants to say yes, wants to be a, you know, in whatever, a good partner, a good woman, all that, whatever. But being a good woman doesn't mean saying yes to whatever I ask her. It means being able to lovingly, kindly, firmly say no
mm.
when something is a no for her, and then allow me to be uncomfortable, for example, allow me to just have my experience inside of that. Um, anyway, I'm putting a lot of words on this. I know, I think in the chapter that I wrote, I think there's like what, 3 or 4 specific things that I say
Mm.
about like how to get a man into his heart.
Yeah, I think it's
Um,
about like leading by example you were talking about. And because I wonder
yeah.
sometimes as in my own experience of sometimes like I if I'm very emotionally involved, I
Mm,
can cry quite easily and I feel really ashamed and embarrassed about that.
mm,
And I'm not sure if
mm.
that's a good thing, if I'm freaking someone out or if I'm just like
Um,
showing how, how touched I am by the situation. So sometimes I'm like,
oh,
so it's really
oh,
hard that we,
Venus.
yeah.
It's so important that you let yourself cry,
Mm.
that is the leading by example, demonstrating. Well, there's two parts to that. One is, and my wife does this beautifully as well, is my wife cries harder than anyone I've ever met. Sometimes she'll cry so hard, all of a sudden I'm not sure. Wait, are you laughing now? What's going on? What's happening? I'm not sure. um, but first, that the capacity to be emotional. I mean, a man that can't feel much or can't feel a lot is going to choose a woman who feels a lot,
Really? That sounds like a
because,
mystery to me. I can't. Wow.
well, because we're all seeking wholeness.
Uh,
And when we have repressed or disconnected from parts of ourselves, and we all have, men and women alike, everybody, it's just the human condition. But for men, in this case, we're talking about, emotions and connecting to your body and your heart and your feelings and all that. most most men that don't feel a lot or struggle to feel alive or enlivened, they're going to choose a woman who brings them enlivenment, and
wow.
she's going to bring enlivenment through her big feelings. Now, it's a troubled relationship because, again, a man who's repressed that side of him will be both attracted to a woman who's expressed, but he will also, just as he was repressed it in him, he'll then try to repress it in her.
Mm,
Right? That's the tragedy of this. When we're not aware that we're doing it, that's when it ends up happening.
mm,
In the same way that, for example, a woman who, let's say, had an emotionally unavailable father or mother, right, was really starving for emotional presence from her parent or significant parent, she may be drawn to a man who likewise is emotionally not present, not available, but all the while she's going to be longing for something that he's already demonstrated he can't give, in a way, right? So it's like she's because she's seeking wholeness, she's seeking to heal that part of herself, and unconsciously choosing an actor to play a role, right? If I can just get the love I want from this person, then I'll be okay. I'll heal that old wound. Again, it's not a
mm,
conscious thought. It's a very primal response to an old wounding.
Mm.
And yet again, that person has chosen to play a role to heal this old wound, and they're going to play the role perfectly, which is I'm not going to give it to you.
Wow.
And so then what, right? Until she understands that this is what I'm choosing this to heal something, it's actually not their job to heal this for me. And until she recognizes that, excuse me, she's going to continue choosing partners that can't give her what she wants. Coming back to the guy that's shut down in his emotions, he's going to keep choosing women who bring emotions. But in the same way he's repressed his emotions, he's going to want her to repress hers. But if
Mm.
she does repress hers, it's like, he'll say things like, you're too much. Don't act crazy. Don't make shit up, whatever. You're too much. That's kind of the message. You're too much. You feel too much. You cry too much. You, whatever.
Mm.
Some men, even you laugh too much. I remember working with women over the years who told me, they would sit as little girls, they'd sit at the breakfast table and they'd giggle, and dad would get angry,
Mm.
send them to their rooms because they're laughing, or making faces, they're having fun. And it was too much for dad. So, she shuts it down, but now all of a sudden she's not enough
Mm.
for him, right? That's the dilemma. So, Venus, what I beg of you as a man, for the sake of other men, not
Mm.
you, of course, but for other men, feel what you feel and don't allow him to diminish it.
Mm. This brings me to my
And I
next
don't
question.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and I don't mean be I don't mean, turn critical and blame him and shame him for, no. Just, it's, I cry, and it's not okay for you to diminish that. It's not okay for you to dismiss that. I'm going to cry. I'm going to feel lots of things, and you don't have to do anything about it. But what's not okay is to tell me it's not okay.
Yeah, because sometimes it's not just about telling you it's not okay, but this brings me to my next question, which is another part of the book which really resonated with me was about conflict and the feminine need for connection, the male need for freedom, and when in conflict, the female focuses on feeling and the male on logic. That's kind of sometimes where I found um,
Yeah.
this kind of some discomfort or this kind of lack of compatibility. And
Yeah.
so I didn't know it was a thing. I thought it was just me. I was like, oh wow, it's a thing.
Yeah.
So how can we
Yeah.
encourage men and women to actually understand each other more? Because it's kind of like if you're feeling a certain way, it doesn't kind of make sense to the male logical mind.
Correct.
Because they weren't doing it out of spite or with an amount of bad intention, but these feelings are kind of like not kind of told, but kind of like not validated.
Yeah. Well, I think, in my experience, there's no getting rid of that difference.
Mm,
In every couple I've ever worked with, including same-sex couples, there's this gap. There's this difference between the partners, and it's this clash of values, freedom versus connection. There's always this dance of values at play, and on the surface they seem opposed to one another, right? Freedom seems completely opposed to connection, because when we're connected there is no freedom. We're stuck in this bond of connection, and when there's freedom, I get to do what I want to do. I don't have to worry about what you're doing or what you think, or that's that's freedom. I'm not connected. And there's, in every relationship argument, there's what I call the two objections at play. There's the freedom objection and the connection objection. And what I mean by that is, also known as the masculine objection and the feminine objection, but I know those words can be tricky for people. So I just call it the freedom objection and the connection objection. And what I mean by that is the freedom objection in almost every argument, one partner, and it can switch, it may not always be the same partner, but one partner is taking a stance for freedom from something. Let's solve this problem because I feel trapped by this problem, right? Let's solve this. Let's fix this, because once we fix it, I'm free of it, right? And you're free of it too. Freedom. Let's be free of this problem. Also, that can also sound like, don't tell me what to do.
mm,
Stop trying to control me, right? Because why? If you control me, that means I'm not free.
mm,
And freedom is my value, at least in this moment. Again, that's not the words we use, but that's underneath. It could be an argument about how we're going to spend money, right? Or take care of the kids, or hell, even where we're going to go eat for dinner. I mean, these arguments arise all the time. And the other partner is a stand for connection. What I mean by that is the connection. It may sound like, don't, again, it may not be these words, but underneath the words is don't leave me alone in this,
Mm,
right? Be with me in this. Don't abandon me. Care about my feelings,
mm,
right? Freedom has nothing to do with that, right? Caring about my feelings has nothing to do with freedom, at least not on the surface. Same, don't leave me alone in this. Is like saying, again, this is all the subtext that when we're not aware of this, oh, it's just a disaster because we're not even arguing about the same things,
mm,
right? But when we can realize, and this was again a great revelation for me, because I was always, I was in this relationship once, that 5-year relationship that I was in, that was just chaos. We got trapped in this all the time, and I was always that unconsciously in the freedom stance. Don't tell me what to do. Don't control me. Don't, you stay out of my lane, right?
mm,
I won't tell you what to do. Don't you tell me what to do, right? So freedom, freedom, freedom all over the place. And let's solve this. Let's fix this. Well, that's not where she was coming from. And, our arguments would get heated such that, okay, I have to leave the room. I need to get out of here. We lived in an apartment, and I would start to head for the door. Like, I can't do this anymore. Like you know, I'm feeling trapped is really what was happening for me. I'm trapped. There's a problem here. I can't solve it. I don't know what to do. This sucks. I'm out.
mm.
Well, Venus, would head for the door and lock it. So I couldn't leave. But literally, she would lock it so I could not leave. Why? Because her value was connection. And
Mm,
if I leave, we're not connected anymore. At least if we're staying and we're fighting and we're arguing, it's not a healthy connection in the same way that me just running out the door is not a healthy freedom. I don't really feel more free. I just feel released from this moment of tension, but I'm not actually any more free in my, heart, mind, and soul. I'm just on the other side of the door, not arguing anymore.
mm,
Right. Likewise, her locking the door and not letting me out was her way of a very unhealthy connection. But at least it's something. At least we're connecting still in her mind,
mm,
right? So, and I often felt, Venus, like there was nothing I could say that would free us from the problem.
mm,
That was the problem. That I was looking to free us from the problem rather than help us get connected again. I wasn't looking for connection. I was looking for freedom, and completely missing what it was that she was needing in that moment. By the way, vice versa, she was completely missing what I was needing in the moment. Right? She could have certainly helped me in certain ways with certain language, but it's, chicken or what is it? Chicken or egg? Who goes first? It doesn't matter. Just someone's got to go first.
mm,
It doesn't always have to be the same partner, but one person. See, what I've learned since then, with my wife, it's very easy for me to now, when we start to get into a disagreement, or that in the past would explode, in past relationships would just get out of control, and now we're arguing and I'm wanting to split. No, now it's as simple as, look, take a deep breath, honey. I love you. I'm with you in this. Your feelings matter to me. We're going to figure this out together.
mm,
Right. I'm saying a few sentences that honor her connection value. And by the way, I value that too. It's just that I tend to come to connection by feeling free first. Like, I don't want to be forced into connection.
mm,
Right. But it doesn't matter when I can say those words like that. I'm talking in what I call connection language,
mm,
not freedom language. I'm talking in connection language. You know, I can see it has a visceral and almost immediate impact on my wife, on her nervous system, on her body. I can see it. She takes that deep breath. Oh, thank God. It's like on a primal level. She's like, oh, he's here with me. He's not abandoning me in this moment.
I can understand
It's,
that. Mm,
and that, whereas arguments in the past for me would last hours, days, weeks, forever.
mm,
My wife and I can get through things in 15 minutes because we know how to use each other's language. And by the way, she uses freedom language with me often. Hey, I'm not trying to tell you what to do.
mm,
You didn't do anything wrong. There's nothing you have to fix. Oh, okay. That's really helpful for my brain. What
mm.
she's telling me in a subtle way is, hey, you're not trapped. You don't have to do anything that you don't want to do. That's really helpful for me to hear.
Mm.
Right? That's when my body goes, okay, so now I can just be here. Okay, now I can just listen because I'm not on guard. Like, wait, you gonna tell me what to do? You gonna tell me how to live my life? You're gonna
Yeah,
turn me
yeah,
into a little boy? You
yeah.
know what I mean?
Definitely. Another thing that part of your book that really struck a chord with me was the part about embracing loneliness and why we should, how can we make the most of our single time when we are
Mm,
craving a loving relationship?
yeah, yeah, yeah. That chapter on embracing loneliness. I think that's really key to having a healthy relationship with another person. Is I can't remember what philosopher said this, but he said something to the effect of all mankind's ills are are because we can't just sit in a room by ourselves and be alone.
Mm,
And I think when we're able to embrace loneliness, aloneness, even the sadness that comes with being alone, I think now we're in a beautiful space to enter relationship because now I'm no longer seeking to get that person to make me not feel alone anymore.
yeah, yeah.
Right. And I think so much of our relationship ills are can be traced to that codependent need to get that person to make me feel better. And if you don't make me feel better, then something is wrong either with you or the relationship.
Mm,
And we need to do something about that. Well, you need to do something about that. That's kind of how it goes. I think that learning to just be with our, the sadness, the pain, the loneliness, whatever, learning to be good companions to ourselves really is what we're talking about.
mm.
I think that sets us up beautifully to being a good companion to another.
This takes me to my next question, which is perfect. I love the story about how you met your wife. It seems like
Mm.
it was the perfect example of you have it having to be in alignment to attract what you desire. Would you
Yeah,
agree with that? And would you like to briefly
absolutely.
share the story for those who don't know it?
Yeah, it's pretty magic how I met my wife and I you know I won't tell the full story. It's when I really tell the story, and I think I tell it in the book. I actually write pretty at length about it. But yeah, I met my wife when I was 41. I think she was 32, so nine years difference. Um, and just disclosure, I wasn't looking for someone 9 years younger than me. That was a bit young for me, actually. I was looking more my age or within 5 years. But I met her. We actually met through the internet, but I was in a cabin in the middle of nowhere, Idaho. I was finishing my first book, I think. Yeah, that must have been my first book. I was finishing that, and I remember I was just in love with my life. I was so in love with my choices. I was really proud of myself for following the whispers of my heart. I was in this cabin in Idaho. I had actually said no to a an opportunity to make some money in Los Angeles, filming a commercial that would have been interesting and in alignment in a way with me. I wasn't going to be an actor. I'm not an actor, but they wanted to film some guy or no, I guess it was a guy. They wanted to film a guy who was like on an eat, pray, love kind of journey
Mm,
and turn it into a commercial. And they were going to pay a little bit of money for that. And I wasn't making a lot of money at the time. And so a big part of me was like, the fear based part of me was like, I need this opportunity.
mm,
But somewhere, in my heart and soul, it was like, no, you don't. What you need to do is go to that cabin in Idaho, get away from Los Angeles, and not next week, but today. You need to do this now. And doing that would have meant saying no to that commercial. And I think I pushed it one day to see if that commercial would really come through. And I still didn't hear anything. And I was like, doesn't matter. I got to go. It's time. And I could feel it. Like just as soon as I hit the road and started driving, oh, just the expansiveness in my body, the deep yes of my choice reverberated throughout my being. Like I just knew, like this is such a yes for me. I don't care what happens on that other path. And as it so happens, a week later, I'm in that cabin. Um, I was still writing and blogging, and one of my blogs exploded on the internet. It was actually the title blog, Choose Her Every Day or
Oh,
Leave
wow.
Her, while I was in that cabin. And 1 million people a day were reading my blogs, were on my website. And, I'd had some success up before that, but not like that. That was a whole new stratosphere. And at that same time, I met my wife. We started chatting just through I think Facebook Messenger or something. I didn't know that she was going to be my wife, but we just started chatting. And I remember I even told her. So that night before, I'd been sitting in this hot tub in this, on the porch of this cabin in this beautiful meadow in Idaho, and I was having champagne, just celebrating my success, and just wow, what a beautiful life. But Venus, I also noticed I was all by myself.
Mm.
you know, um, and I just whispered out loud to life. I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm done doing this by myself.
Mm.
I mean, I'll do it
Ready.
as long as I need to. I'll keep going, but I'm done. And I have a little prayer to life. Bring me the woman. Bring me that relate. Bring her. Let's go. And take your time. I do this practice I call command and surrender.
Oh, I
You
love
know,
it.
command and surrender. I command life. Bring me the resources, the opportunities, the woman in this case. That is not just to feed my ego, but that is so that I can do what you brought me here to do,
Mm.
whatever that looks like. And life, I surrender. I surrender the timing of it. I surrender what it looks like. The detail, like you take care of that. Right? Command and surrender. That is such a powerful practice for
Mm.
me because it allows me to speak into existence what it is that I want, what is my vision, but it also disengages my ego from being attached to how it then actually comes about.
Mm.
Right? It's a paradoxical practice, but I literally was in conversation with Sylvie within 24 hours of that moment.
Yeah, because I think I'm a big practitioner of law of attraction. I'm actually writing a book now
Mhm.
about orgasmic manifestation. So it's about using
Oh,
orgasm to manifest. And I've
yeah.
recently, everyone talks about being specific, but I've learned the joy or the power of being non-specific about your
Mm,
goals. 'Cause sometimes it can,
mhm,
when you're specific, it might not be the right thing for you. And when you allow a bit of
mm.
flexibility, then you can be
Yeah.
surprised, and then it can be something unexpected. Something you would never write down on a vision board, So
I'm
we-
so enrolled in that. I agree with
Mm.
you. I think being specific can actually be really limiting. It could
Yeah,
actually be
definitely.
sabotaging.
Mm.
So I love that.
So a couple of quick questions I ask all of my
Mhm.
guests. What is the book that changed your life?
Oh, there's been so many, but I think um, I mean, Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, which I
Mm.
read in my 20s, that was life changing. Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth,
Mm.
that was life changing. I read that book and thought I never have to read another book again. It was
Oh,
so
wow.
naive and silly, but that's how life changing that book was. And even on my path, the work that I do, David Data's Way of the Superior Man, which I read at 36, right when I was making this pivot, out of sucking at relationships for the rest of my life, setting myself on a new path.
Mm.
Uh, Way of the Superior Man, David Data. I mean, those are just three. I could keep going.
Great. So what affirmation or phrase do you live by?
So this one that I've been living by for many, many years is life is constantly conspiring to bless me.
Oh,
My only job is get out of the way and let it happen.
amazing. Love
I've
it.
lived by that. That's been with me for years.
Do you have it written down somewhere so you can look at it, or
I
is it
it's
in your
so
heart?
ingrained in my brain. I actually don't have that written down. It's so
Mm,
ingrained in my brain. Life is constantly conspiring to bless me. My only job is get out of the way and let it happen.
amazing. So where can people find you?
Best place is my website, Bryan with a Y. Spell my name with a Y, Bryan. I think that's the proper English way. Are you English by birth?
My parents, I am, but my parents are Irish. But in Ireland,
Oh,
they
Irish.
spell it
Okay.
with an I, Brian, with an I.
Oh, they do. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I
I
think
don't
in
know where
England,
they spell.
yeah. I know
I don't
it's
know where
yours
they.
with Y. Yeah.
I don't know where to spell it with a Y, but I'm Bryan with a Y. Oh,
Uh,
by the way, we have a love affair with Ireland. We try to go almost every year.
oh,
Uh,
cool.
the bryanreeves.com. You can find my book, you can find my blogs, you can find, I work with how I work with men, and even I still do some work with couples, but yeah, bryanreeves.com. I'm on all the social medias, but there's links to all my pages there as well.
And on the penultimate episode, I actually reviewed your book. So
Oh,
I gave you a
great.
glowing review.
Oh, thank
So
you.
yeah, it's really good. I
Okay.
also it's already
Is that
out.
already out?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I interviewed Jonathan Asley, who's the number one midlife dating coach. So it's a
Okay.
real love kind of
Yeah.
episode there.
I love it.
Yeah.
Great.
So, Brian Reeves, thank you take for joining us today on the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Venus. I'm honored. Thank you for inviting me on this. I love the conversation we've had and love the work you're up to.
Thank you.